I'm Chip Freud, and this is the Artist Spotlight, conversations with contemporary artists based on 5 simple questions that explore the artist's journey, creativity, and sources of inspiration. Welcome to another episode of the Artist Spotlight podcast. Today I'm joined by Caitlin Cary. Caitlin is an accomplished fiber artist based in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to the show, Caitlin.
Hi, I'm happy to be with you.
It's marvelous we've had a chance to get together. We've sort of known each other, for a couple years now. I've got some common friend connections, but I've just loved your work, and this just gave me an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. So for the interest of our audience here, can you tell our audience a little bit about the current projects you may be working on or something maybe you just finished?
Sure. In order to keep myself going, I always need deadlines. So the big thing is, I just sort of wrapped up my last shows of 2020. Wait, no, the other year, 2021. and got to sort of spend 2020 making that work, and 2021 resting on my laurels in that regard, and so now I've booked a show upcoming at the Iredell. I've learned how to say Arts Council, which is a nice big gallery. So I will need to make a whole lot of work, and I'm, as it's kind of a lucky spot to be in as I begin a new year, to feel like I'm beginning a whole new project. And I don't know how much I know about it yet, except for that I've spent the past year kind of engaging with a whole lot of experimentation in terms of using different materials while still in the world of fabric. I've begun using some transparent fabrics, a lot of silk, and adding beeswax and coating fabrics with beeswax to achieve a kind of layering that I had never done before, which is not the easiest thing to explain without a whole lot of visual aids. But suffice to say that if you imagine how I have heretofore been making my work, it's one flat piece of something with a bunch of flat other pieces placed next to one another. If you think about quilting, if anybody knows something about quilting, each element is next to the other. And so this is, I'm playing with layering things on top of each other, trying to create a kind of depth, because I am fascinated by how I can get deeper into, I guess I'm mostly concerned with the built environment still, depicting structures, but I feel like I can get into another dimension, a little deeper into space, and that's exciting. And I've had a lot of dubious potential failures over the past year, but I think I'm onto something, or I hope I am. And so that's kind of where my head is. And I, in the interim, I'm always fortunate to be able to say that I keep myself in serial with doing commission work, such as what you engaged me to do a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Where I, depict people's homes or their businesses, or I'm going to do one of a nearby elementary school where the principal, who's much beloved, is retiring. And so people have gotten me to make a needleprint of the school. So in the, in between tearing my hair out over this new stuff, I can do what I'm used to doing and make a little money.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks for that introduction of what you're up to. As you know, this podcast really is all about our 5 questions. And the first of which is, what is your earliest memory of making art of any kind?
You know, I think that I would say that my very first, and I was so lucky in this way that I guess being old has its advantages, because my dad gave me a pocket knife and I'm pretty sure I was 4, and he taught me how to safely whittle, you know, solely by means of pointing the knife away from you instead of towards you, ever. And he could convince me that that was the only possible way that I was going to be allowed to do it. And so I remember sitting out in the woods on the wood pile, whittling sticks. And I did indeed feel like I, was trying to sculpt. I'm sure I don't remember an end product of any of them, but it was more than just, it was an intentional kind of removing of layers of wood, trying to make faces or things like that. So,
Okay. Because I certainly whittled as a kid, but I was just making pointy sticks like every other boy.
well, I'm sure I made plenty of pointy sticks too, but I do feel like and my dad was many thing, a musician and an artist and a engineer and a blah blah blah. So I had, from my earliest, I had the example of you can use tools to make cool things.
Well, excellent. That's a very cool story. You have, for at least for me, what I think is a pretty unique medium. I don't think I'd seen much of the needleprint as you describe it, of what you do. Tell our listeners a little bit about what a needleprint is and what brought you to that medium.
Sure. So I think a lot of people in the fiber arts would have started with sewing skills, which I kind of came at this backwards, and I've taught myself to sew well enough to do what I came up with wanting to do. I had sewn napkins and tablecloths, hems, and that sort of thing, but never really tried quilting. And in some ways, I don't really think about myself at all as a quilter, even though that is definitely the closest friend of what I do. And it is a kind of quilting, although I think that people who are serious quilters would argue with me, because I think a definition is that it absolutely must be possible for a quilt to be functional, even if its end goal is to hang on a wall. It's not called a quilt unless you could put it over your body and keep warm. I'm pretty sure I'm not speaking out of turn by saying that. So what I do is was always intended to be stiff and hung on a wall in a frame. So I start with for a long time, I sewed fabric onto paper, and recently, in the past couple of years, I've moved away from the paper for various, mostly just archival practical reasons, and I'm sewing onto canvas that I stiffen with gesso and bookbinding glue, so it essentially gets as hard as paper. And the stiff part is important in my thinking and process, because it allows for really tiny detail that would be, some people accomplish it with just soft, smushy fabric, but I don't know that I could. So the stiff stuff is what allows me to create detail. And let's see, and I made up the word needleprints because I felt like there wasn't a very great word for what I did, calling it fabric collage, which is what it is. It's very similar to cut paper collage, except for all the stitched elements and its reliance on fabric, which is I might be getting a little rambly here, but basically what I'm doing is applique quilting on stiff surface, and I work from photographs that I, whenever possible, they're photographs that I've taken, but sometimes when I'm doing a commission, I have, or a historic subject, I have to use someone else's photograph. and the photograph is actually cut up and becomes pattern pieces. So
Oh.
it's a pretty literal translation that, that from, in terms of perspective, at least, and depending on my level of skill, how well I do at transliterating it is, up to the eye of the beholder. But anyway, that's kind of my process and what I do, and also why it lends itself to commission.
What led you to this media?
I pretty sure I can honestly say it was a trip to the scrap exchange, which is this, for people who don't know, I imagine if our audience is local, all the artists know about it, but it's this magic place in Durham that's a big warehouse full of cast-offs from all industries, all kinds of different industries. There's glassware from laboratories, there's bowling balls, sometimes there's paper, wood, fabric, etc. And what I came across one time was sample books from upholstery industry. And I feel like, I guess I knew in the back of my mind about those things, but we weren't a family who had things custom upholstered or anything. And I didn't know anybody in that line of work. So they were kind of a revelation to me that these existed and that all of this amazing textured fabric existed. And I think that I was immediately attracted to the reuse element of when I was stretching away from being a professional musician and towards being somebody who made things. I did early on think like, God, does the world need any more crap? And so really it appealed to me right away to keep things out of the landfill and make them into something else that hopefully it'll be a long time before they go back in the landfill, but who knows? At least they'll go to the thrift store first.
True. Well, having acquired one of your pieces as a gift, I think they, in most cases, will be treasured for many years to come, because they are truly unique and beautiful pieces. So,
thanks. That's the hope.
Indeed.
I have found my records in the thrift store, so I can't imagine it'll happen in my lifetime that I'll find hopefully one of the small early pieces.
Well, you've already mentioned commissions, but in the outside of the commission space, what inspires your art? Where does it come from?
I think I was thinking about this question ahead of time, and the answer is really just a wandering and seeing in the different way that about from your photography work. And I just relish this, and it absolutely 1,000,000% does not happen to me every time I walk out the door. I kind of have to go out with this intention into the world and look for things of interest, subjects of interest. And very fortunately, my work does not demand that I be a great photographer in any sense of the word, because I'm making it out of fabric, so I don't have to get the light just right, or even if the angles aren't just right, I can fudge that and play with that and crop and that sort of thing. I am not a developed or a naturally great photographer. I somewhere in between it going into the camera and coming out, I do some manipulation, and I do take lots and lots of photos of the subject, and feel like I've developed an eye for finding the best one that I got, kind of thing. But that's the great thing about what I do, is that fabric adds all this extra magic, so it doesn't have to be magic at the beginning of the process, but what motivated me first was was kind of historic preservation impulses, because I've lived in Raleigh for sheesh, 25 years ish, or maybe it's longer now. I might have been saying that for too long now. But uh and it's a place I moved to like sight unseen. I came here for grad school because Lee Smith was teaching writing, and I fancied myself an author or a budding author at the time, and I came here to get a master's degree. And so of all the places I've ever lived, it was like this place that I discovered totally organically, and there were all these, and I didn't quite know why I was here or why I would pick it. And so there were all these sort of landmark places that were what Raleigh was when I first plopped myself here and figured out what it was, where I was. And slowly over the past 10 or 15 years, like watching them disappear one by one, started to produce a great deal of anxiety for me, and I think it was kind of in the culture too, like for everybody's like, oh my God, they tore down, blah. And so my first several years were spent depicting, I guess I call them humble landmarks, and like and learning how to do what I was doing, and they didn't have to be perfect, or because they were already perfect to people, you know what I mean? Like, so that was I recommend that as a way to enter art. Find a subject first that people are going to dig, and then you can, even if the first things you make aren't perfect, people might still want them and make you feel like you're doing something valuable.
Yeah, one of those landmarks I remember of yours is the International House of Pancakes building. I mean, that's such an iconic structure from across the country,
Yeah.
but one by one they've been disappearing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that I don't know where they are elsewise. I know that it's a national chain, of course, but I don't remember seeing one that looked quite as crazy and cool as the one on Hillsborough Street.
But that actually was their standard design, as I understand it, because I mean, you and I both had spent some of our youth on the east side of Cleveland, and I know there was one on the east side of Cleveland that had that
All
big
right.
A-frame shape to it.
I missed it.
Uh,
Darn. I was just born. I wasn't old enough to eat pancakes before I left.
there you go. All right. So that brings us to question number 4, which is, what advice would you give to an artist just starting out?
Well, I guess I kind of put some of that in question 3. Whoops, I must be pedantic today. uh, you know, I think what it really takes is a kind of fearlessness and self-trust that, and I was lucky to be able to come at it this way, because I kind of squiggled out of one quote unquote career into another one, and with a sort of seamless feel to it. I didn't really admit to myself that I wasn't a professional musician anymore until I was already kind of doing this. But all my life I have been have bravely hung upon the wall anything that I made, and I feel like that can get squished out of you really easily by all kinds of means. Some happen in school, although I am absolutely not here to say don't go to art school. I would never say such a thing, and if I could tomorrow, I would go to art school. But and take the criticism too. I think all of that is completely valid, but I do feel like if you can learn to love what you make, and just love it because you made it, and it don't feel as though that is terribly dangerous. I think that's that's my real advice. And I think somebody could shoot holes all through that, and it might lead to a whole lot of terrible art being made, but it's not going to kill anybody. You'll know in a while if nobody buys it, you know.
Well,
But I think that trust yourself and trust your abilities and go forth.
that's some good advice, because I know, I'm a late in life artist, if you will. And one of the things that had my moments of struggle with is the imposter syndrome.
Sure.
How in the world can I be here? I'm not of that caliber. I can't. And you got to get yourself out of that, because it can be very self-defeating. And I think your point of just, do what you love and be fearless about it, that's sound advice.
Well, thanks. And yeah, I feel like if you spend any time at all talking to any artist in any discipline of art, or perhaps anybody in the whole wide world, we all will say we know about the imposter syndrome.
Indeed, indeed. Well, brings us to our final question, and that is, if you could pick an artist or two, if you can't just get one, that we should all go check out. This is an opportunity to share somebody maybe that you've just recently discovered or has been a long time mentor or inspiration for you. But somebody we should go check out their work.
What a delightful question. Well, and I'll just go ahead and use this moment to give a teeny tiny plug for my new endeavor that began just about a year ago. My husband and I opened a little teeny tiny art gallery. So the first thing I'll say is you can discover our favorite artists at the Pocket Gallery, including some artists who have been my earliest influences. I love the work of Megan Sullivan, who she's not a full-time artist. I don't know if she has ever only made art, but she always has made art, and she works with the sewing machine, and she's very interested in op art. She's extremely precise in her work and trying to accomplish like visual trickery, which is my best attempt at a very lame-o definition of what op art is. But she's also really funny, and most of her work contains some text, and she's a really fine comedian. And I really think that art that makes you tricks your eye, makes you think deeply about the process, because she, as someone who is trying to make sewing work, she's totally an inspiration, but then also to laugh. And her jokes are not silly, they are deep. She would disagree. I have a feeling she would argue against me. And let's see, an artist who we have shown and continue to show on and off is Pete Sack, who was a colleague of mine at Art Space, who I admire for all kinds of reasons, mostly his avid dedication to his work. He's like I would hold him up as the example of like how you put in the work and do the thing. He can work in any style that he wants. He's currently making some very abstract pieces, but he's I won't try to go into describing his work because it's extremely varied, and I just think it's all extremely valuable and beautiful. And in fact, we just bought ourselves a Pete Sack painting that we're very excited about. We're trying to become collectors. We have a few walls that need filling. And so those are two to put on your radar. And yeah, like I said, come to the pocket, because we're chock full of all of our favorite local artists, and we're showing, it was a monthly rotation. I've now moved it to bi-monthly rotation guest artists. So there's always someone new to see. And it's been really, really cool and gratifying to take on this role as a quote unquote, I guess I'm just a flat out greenhorn curator, if I, but it's been great.
Well, cool. Thank you for those recommendations. I'll have to definitely go check them out. And that brings us to the end of our conversation. As I remind our listeners each time, if you want to learn more about Caitlin's art, you can check her out at CaitlinCary.com, or as she mentioned, at her new Pocket Gallery in the historic Oakwood section of Raleigh. It is definitely worth a stop as you make your way through downtown Raleigh. So, Caitlin, thank you again for your time. This has been a real pleasure, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks. It's an honor to have been invited. Thanks a lot for what you're doing.
Thank you for joining us. This has been the Artist Spotlight with Chip Freund. Find accompanying blog posts at chipfreundphoto.com/blog, and you may subscribe to our show on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like listening.